Alaikum salam.
Professor Emeritus Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of the International Islamic University Malaysia, UMC members, deans, directors, Her Excellency Ms. Karima Al-Khoury, the UN Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam, His Excellency Mr. Pascal Grégoire, the Ambassador of Belgium to Malaysia, Honorable Dato Sri Anwar Fazal, International Civil Society Activist, Adjunct Professor, IIUM, and our special keynote speaker today, one Mimi Zarina, Representative UNHCR Malaysia, respected panelists, respected participants from IIUM, Malaysia, and abroad, our participant in the Zoom and in the YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First and foremost, a warm welcome to everyone who joined us in this international forum on valorizing migrants, human dignity, and global engagement together with Triumph, which is taking place in the occasion of the International Migrants Day 2021. The International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, IIUM, is pleased to organize this important event. We are very thankful to God the Almighty for His grace and blessings today. I'm very much obliged to thank Prof. Tansri Zul, the rector of IIUM, for initiating the idea of this timely forum. I also thank Dato Anwar Fazal for his willingness to be with us today and his support all the way. I would like also to express my gratitude to our highly respected panelists, Ms. Karima Al-Khoury, His Excellency Ambassador Pascal, Sister Wan Mimi Zarina, Mr. Adrian Pereira, and Dr. Maulana Akbar Shah. I would like also to welcome all participants from Malaysia and elsewhere, especially the staff of the UN Resident Coordinator, UNHCR, IMO, universities, and other civil society activists. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, today our planet encounters tremendous challenges and problems at many fronts. One of the critical fronts that demands global intervention and support is the issue of migrants and their well-being and future. The United Nations has been dealing with this issue for decades. It is self-evident that numbers of migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees is on the increase. For example, in 2019 alone, the number of migrants globally reached an estimate of 272 million, 51 million more than in 2010, while in 2020, it escalated to around 281 million international migrants of all types. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, today at 70th anniversary, the International Organization of Migrants advocates the mission of harnessing the potential of human mobility and power of human mobility. His Excellency, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has clearly stated that on this International Migrant Day, let us seize the opportunity of the recovery from the pandemic and implement the global compact for safe, orderly, and regular migrant. To implement the global compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration, reimagine human mobility, enable migrants to reignite economies at home and abroad, and build more inclusive and resilient societies. With this introduction, we called for this important forum today to share the views of experts and scholars and to chart the way forward in order to integrate the migrants in the global picture of the economies of the countries and the world. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, with all the team of scholars, activists, and officials who are with us here today, we shall start our webinar with showing you a video of the IMO that gives us the bigger picture of the Migrant Day. Can we show the video, brother?
Migration impacts us all. You may have a friend or neighbor who has migrated, or perhaps you are a migrant yourself. People migrate to seek work and educational opportunities, while others do so to escape conflict and disasters, extreme poverty, and the adverse effects of climate change. Despite the impact of COVID-19 mobility restrictions, migration will continue to shape our world, providing benefits for our local, regional, and global communities. Since its establishment, IOM has evolved into the leading international organization dedicated to promoting safe, orderly, and regular migration, assisting those most vulnerable and harnessing the potential of human mobility. IOM's work covers fields such as return and reintegration, labor migration, climate change, migration health, border management, data and research, crisis response, and migration policy. The organization supports its member states to respond to the needs of migrants and improve migration governance amid conflict, political upheaval, natural disasters, and economic crises. In 2016, IOM joined the United Nations as a related agency, providing migrants with a much-needed voice on the global stage. IOM is there to guarantee the safety, well-being, and dignity of people on the move, advocating for their human rights to be respected at all times. As nations develop new strategies to manage migration, IOM's dedicated staff are providing pragmatic policy recommendations and operational support for emergency and non-emergency situations in more than 100 countries. As IOM marks 7 decades of service, a particular focus of its work is to mitigate the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19 and harness the energy and entrepreneurial spirit of migrants to reimagine human mobility. Looking into the future, IOM is committed to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and to achieving the objectives set by the Global Compact for Migration to reduce inequalities and ensure that no one is left behind. Learn more about IOM and its work at iom.int.
Thank you very much. We will start with our Professor Zul, our first speaker in this international forum. I think every one of us here and elsewhere knows Dato Sri Zulkifli Abdul Razak, the rector of the International Islamic University in Malaysia, but a brief account of his biography, very short one.
Very short one, please.
Inshallah. Professor Zulkifli Abdul Razak is currently the rector of the International Islamic University in Malaysia. He was the Vice Chancellor of University Science, Malaysia. He is also the immediate past president of the International Association of Universities, a UNESCO-affiliated organization based in Paris. Professor Zul was awarded the prestigious 2017 Gilbert Medal by Universitas 21 in recognition of his long-term commitment to a sustainable approach to international higher education. He is a fellow of the Academy of Science Malaysia, the World Academy of Art and Sciences, and the World Academy of Islamic Management. Professor Zul was an honorary professor at the University of Nottingham from 2014 until August 2020. He is also a member of the advisory board of the Right Livelihood College Steering Committee based at University of Bonn, and an advisory board member, Institute of Sustainable Development and Learning at Leuphana University of Lundberg. He was an invited speaker at the 2015 Nobel Dialogue in Sweden. Professor Zul was awarded the 2017 Toko Academic Negara National Academic Laureate and recipient of number of honorary doctorate, brothers and sisters. The latest of this honorary doctorate was conferred to him by the University of Cyber Jaya. Professor Zul, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Aziz, for your kind and generous remarks on myself. You will notice very immediately that has nothing to do with migrants, which I'm going to talk to you about. So I'm no scholar and an expert in this, but I do share a lot of sentiments on what is going on. And I'd like to thank you for your video, which is really an eye-opener, although it's a very short one. So, Assalamu alaikum, a greeting of peace to everyone, His Excellency, Ms. Karima Al-Khoury, United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam, His Excellency, a colleague, Mr. Pascal Gogre, the Ambassador of Belgium to Malaysia, my mentor, actually, Honorable Datuk Sri Anwar Faisal, international civil society activist, and many more. Also now is an adjunct professor at IIUM. Sister Zarina, we've been interacting for a long time on this issue. Unhcr representative, certainly my brother, Professor Aziz Bagal, who is the moderator and also the Dean of ISTEC, Dr. Adrian, Brother Maulana, fellow panelists, brothers and sisters. Let me first of all thank Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for giving this opportunity. And I would like foremost also to thank Datuk Sri Anwar Faisal, who awakened me to this day of the 22nd of December as an International Migrant Day. Migrant has been a kind of issue that we've been dealing with, but not in a very overt way. And I'm very pleased to have a lot of people now coming together to talk about this issue. Since I have to run for another meeting, which is talked about another form of migrant, which is caused by the flood, as far as students and the community is concerned, I will take a very brief moment to tell you what the university is doing and how we could hopefully collaborate with one another. This university, I've been here only for slightly more than 3 years, has got a mission statement and a vision statement that really aligned with this whole idea of migrant and human dignity and also humanitarian values. Yeah? Our vision talks about an upliftment of human life quality and also civilization. I can name very few universities that's got a vision statement of that nature that talks about just beyond your borders, but inclusive of others at the same time in the context of what we call Rahmatan lil Alamin, or mercy to all. It's not a university that dedicates only itself to Muslims or the Muslim Ummah. It's a university that dedicates itself to whole humanity, not only humanity, but also non-human at the same time, animals, plants, and everything, whatever it is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are responsible for. And therefore, migrants naturally become one of the very keen subject that we want to get engaged with, and also to be contributory to solving the problem as much as we could. And I will enumerate some of the ideas what we were trying to do a little bit later on. As far as the mission of the university is concerned, mission number 6 directly deals with intercultural dialogue, intercultural understanding with a deep sense of responsibility. I think migrant issues, does not shy away from the issue of culture, shy away from the issues of values and so on and so forth. Sometimes these are the values that acts as a barrier between two people coming together and trying to make a meaningful relationship as far as not only migrant, but just living together in a world that is peaceful and harmonious. So these two alone, I think, is compelling for us to be a little bit more open, to a little bit more active, and a little bit more overt in talking about this migrant issue, which has been mentioned by Prof. Aziz, not in a small scale. I think it is worse than what we used to know as far as the migrant population is concerned. And that it comes from war-torn countries, it comes from countries which is very vulnerable, makes it even worse. And with the intercultural dialogue and also intercultural understanding and hanging on a thread will not solve the problem. So talking about it and having activists, many of you have got experiences that we could share. The university indeed is very, very happy and very, very delighted that we have this forum today. Now, as far as the university is concerned, we have got a small experience that we want to share with you in the context of migrant. And this goes back to the year early in the 1990s when there's a Bosnian war in Europe. In the 1990s, when there's a Bosnian war in Europe, the university opens its door to many of the students, and I think more than 100, but not more than 200 came to the university, and we spend time and give education to them. I think there is now an open sort of experience that everybody knows, and most of them I think have education in this university, and you are able to document it in a book called The Bosnian Experience: Humanizing Education in Malaysia. I think this is one of the very successful attempts in trying to integrate people into society and trying to give them meaning to what life is all about. And alhamdulillah, many of them now have returned to Bosnia, and some of them becomes very important people who shape policies and also experiences that they gain from Malaysia, and indeed many of them would regard Malaysia as their second home. So this is an experience that I think not many universities are able to tell. Certainly no university in Malaysia has done this, but this university has done it, and has done it in a very successful way. Indeed, the establishment of the university is meant for this, to provide for people who are not able to have this opportunity, to make sure that they are educated and given whatever that needs for them to return to their home state. It's not for them to stay in Malaysia, but for them to return to their home state and make the best that they could as far as life is concerned in their own front and also in their own home state. So that has been, quote unquote, our ambition and our aspiration. And now that this migrant population and the whole issue of immigration becomes a big issue, we are contemplating to do the same. We are contemplating to bring as many people as possible into the university, but it is not an easy thing, as Zorina Mimi will probably tell us. There are many roadblocks, there are many unreasonable requests, there are many things that I think we can just probably negotiate and get them into our university. The university is willing to open its door to all these people so that they can have their education and they can go back to their home state and become more meaningful. The stories that they tell us, if they go to their home state without any skills, without education, then they'll be enslaved again. So they want this education as a kind of a tool, as a kind of empowerment for them to speak for themselves and be a little bit more forceful in trying to determine what their destiny is all about. And the university is all for this. So that will be one ambition, I think, out of this. If we can solve this problem, given your experience, how we can bring many more migrants into this university and give them the right education so that they can actually make meaningful contribution, not only their home front, but also perhaps the world over. We are talking about right now very seriously the population of Rohingyas, because they're just at the backyard of our country. They are part of ASEAN, they are part of Asia, and I think we should be able to do this. If we can do this for Bosnia, for Europe, I think we should be able to do this for Asia at the same time. But looks like it is not easy. It's probably more difficult than what we are encountering as far as the Bosnian experience is concerned. So that is the larger perspective why this webinar is important to us, so that we can get UNCHR and other experiences to be put together. If we need to make another dent, I think we will try to do so. Now, in trying to understand this, we are also looking at what experiences have we got apart from just we have got the Bosnian experience. We have been working with a group in Netherlands, which is part of the regional centers of expertise. We are trying to build a kind of a toolkit as how to actually deal with migrant population. I think the toolkit has been launched maybe about 2 months ago in a meeting in Edinburgh, so that anybody else who wants to work with migrant population will use this as a guide. And this guide is contributory from many migrants population, including ours, as to how best to deal with it. This is still very new in its attempt, but there to tell you that we are very serious about it, so that we have got a standard way of dealing this, so that it's easier to do this on an international scale rather than very isolated in our own provinces or states or whatever community we are dealing with. So that has been another international experience that is now work between us, London and Netherlands and a few other countries that have got similar experiences and similar aspiration as far as Malaysia is concerned. Now, on the home front, when we look at what this migrant population is all about, as Muslims, we are able to fall back to the days of the Hijrah, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam bring his followers or advocates at that particular time across from Medina to Mecca. These are the groups of people who are called the Muhajirin. I think Brother Maulana should be able to help me if I'm wrong. And meet with the counterparts in Medina, which is called the helpers or the Ansar. I think this merging of two communities was separated by boundaries or geographical location. I think it's a lesson for us to learn. How do these people are able finally to merge into one community, giving so many things that they are able to give to one another, sharing the love, sharing the property, and also sharing whatever else that need to be shared, so that the merger of these two communities, which is probably unknown to themselves, becomes a mark of Islam as a community from that point onwards, what we call the Hijrah. I will not elaborate on this, but I'm sure Brother Maulana will be able to tell us. But this is a kind of model that we want to surface it again. It is a historical model, it works, but somehow or other it doesn't go into mainstream thinking. Somehow or other it doesn't even go to what you call discussion among intellectuals, as though this is an isolated sort of experience that has no relevance. We want to relook at this and find where are the relevance value that we can bring now into the midst of a chaotic world, as it were. Not only the pandemic, now there is this what you call the flood, not only in Malaysia, I think it's almost all around the world. I remember Germany has got one in July, and then later on it moves to other places. And now with all these things coming together, how do we actually use this experience of the Ansar and the Muhajirin as a kind of a starting point where relevant, so that this can also be another model for us to actually move up the ladder of trying to understand human beings between different experiences and different counterparts. Yeah, the question of brotherhood, the questions of sacrifice, something which I think has not been done very well. The word sacrifice, I think, has lost its meaning. When I met Anwar Fazal when I was a student 40 years ago, I think the context was very much about sacrifice. How do you actually give to other people who have not had what we have had? Although we have not very much, but giving so that other people can also experience what you experience is something that is core in many of the things that we want to do, but that has been forgotten. More often than not, the students today, if I may say so, were asking what they can have rather than what they can give. Even in the context of the flood, they'll say, what can I have? I told them, you cannot have anything, and for now, it's for the time for you to give. And alhamdulillah, I think more than 3 buses every day will leave the campus to go and work with the flood-prone areas around the country. And I'm indeed very pleased. There is a sense of sacrifice that needs to be built in education, which is not education anymore, when we just take whatever you can take and not giving out for other people. And perhaps this is where we need to start in changing the mindsets of the young and also the old and the policymakers sometimes in one way or another. The question of building trust, the question of building respect, the question of building relationship between groups of people that you do not know. And in this case, I would like to acknowledge Ambassador Pascal. I do not know him, but he came to my university and he wanted to talk about spirituality, if I'm not mistaken. You know, it was just probably a small gesture for him. And we spent, I think, 2 hours beginning the discussion, and I think the relationship is built. I hope, Pascal, I got it right, that we are now very good friends in trying to understand what's happening in Europe and what's happening in Malaysia. We talk all about all things, including the vaccines and so on and so forth. I think this is what, at the end of the day, when we build relationship, we get another source of information, another source of friendship that will help you to go along when you have got problems as such. So I would like to thank him for this. And we have gone out a bigger assignment from the Ministry of Health that wants to use culture as a new diplomacy as far as Malaysia is concerned. And certainly the discussion with the minister is about, again, how do you solve the migrant problems as part of diplomacy using cultural sort of platform or cultural intelligence as we understand it today. So these are the general landscape that I can share with you. And we are still an infant in this. We are naive. We are not knowing very much about it. But given your help, given your willingness to work with us, inshallah, we can make a dent, as I've mentioned, beginning from the year 2022. And I'm very proud to know that IOM is as old as I am. They were born in 1951. You know? And thanks for reminding me how old we are, or at least I am. This is something that we want to celebrate so that our 70 years means something to us, if not to other people around the world as such. So Professor Aziz, I will stop there. I need to go to the other meeting. If I can, I'll come back and join you. But let me thank everybody for your kind gestures, your kind contribution. And like IIUM, once you are into our circle, we will never let you go. So you will be part of us one way or another, whether you like it or not. We will sign you on and we will come to you when we need you. So thank you very much, and Merry Christmas for those of you who celebrate Christmas. And I wish you well. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you, Tansri.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much for this really very important framework and the landscape, as you mentioned, how we should look at this issue. And you have proved actually beyond any doubt that togetherness and sacrifice and working together and valorizing this migrants, I think this is the way forward. And you have really clearly mentioned how IIUM long time ago was working in this format and trying to develop. And I think linking this issue of migrants to our own history of the migration of the Prophet and the team and the values enshrined in that experience, I think this will be a guide to us. Thank you, Tansri, again, and may Allah bless you for your presence. And inshallah, if you have another meeting, we pray for you, Tansri. Inshallah. Inshallah. We move forward, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers in YouTube and the Zoom. Now we will be listening to a short video from Ms. Karima Al-Khoury, the UN Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam, who could not make it to be with us here in this virtual room as she has other commitments. But Alhamdulillah, she sent to us a very enlightening and focused video in this occasion. Before that, I would like just to mention that Ms. Al-Khoury brings to the position, her new position as the coordinator here, more than 20 years of international development experience, which she has acquired at the United Nations and externally. Within the organization, she most recently led the 2030 Agenda Division at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, a role she assumed after managing the population and development portfolio and pioneering the work of the Commission on International Migration, population aging, and youth empowerment. Before that, she served as a regional advisor on governance and project coordinator at the United Nations Development Programme. Prior to joining the United Nations, Ms. Al-Khoury worked in Morocco as a lecturer at Al Akhawain University, as well as with a think tank engaging with government, civil society, the private sector, academia, youth, and the international organizations on development issues in the country. I asked our sister to show the video of Her Excellency Ms. Karima.
Yan Berbahagya, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of the International Islamic University Malaysia, Your Excellency Pascal Grégoire, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Belgium to Malaysia, Yan Berbahagya Dr. Sri Anwar Fazal, Adjunct Professor, International Islamic University Malaysia, Professor Abdulaziz Berhout, Dean of the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, International Islamic University Malaysia, ladies and gentlemen, participants from Malaysia and abroad, Assalamu alaikum, good morning. It gives me great pleasure to join you in this international webinar on valorizing migrants, human dignity, and global engagement. Together we triumph. As we celebrate the International Migrants Day, we also celebrate migration not as an issue that we need to resolve, but a reality and opportunity we can all benefit from. Migration is a multifaceted, multidisciplinary reality. It crosses borders and impacts the life of millions of people. How migration is managed can make it either a pathway to dignity, economic prosperity, and social inclusion, or a succession of hardships and unfulfilled hopes. The New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, adopted in September 2017, was a historic breakthrough and unambiguously expressed the political will of world leaders to save lives, protect rights, and share responsibility on a global scale. The Global Compact for Migration was adopted in December 2018, marking a paradigm shift and triggering global efforts to make migration work for everybody. It was the first intergovernmental UN agreement on a common approach to managing international migration based on cooperation, based on sustainable development and human rights. It recognized that migration can serve as a catalyst for development, and that safe, orderly, and regular migration increases its potential to drive social and economic change. However, migrants also face challenges, including exploitation, trafficking, and forced labor. They also suffer from weak and non-inclusive social security and social protection schemes, both in the countries of origin and destination. They also suffer from limited access to basic services. They are often disproportionately affected during emergencies, and we also how the pandemic exacerbated existing vulnerabilities. In the 3 years since the adoption of the Global Compact, GCM, some states have taken important steps to protect the rights and well-being of migrants. Some have undertaken substantial reforms to ensure that the recruitment is fair, that migrant workers enjoy decent work. Others continue to tackle the impacts of COVID-19 by ensuring a non-discriminatory access to vaccine and the continued employment of migrant workers, including by ensuring more flexible pathways to regular migration. In Malaysia, migrants contribute significantly and are valuable members to the economy. There are about 2 million migrants officially working in Malaysia, and they are key to the success of various industries: agriculture, plantations, manufacturing, and services. The International Migration Review Forum next year will take stock of progress in implementing the GCM. Built on the premise that no state can address migration alone, it aims to take stock of countries' achievements and developments in the governance of migration. Since the GCM was adopted, Malaysia has taken encouraging steps towards making migration work for all. It has just launched the National Action Plan on Anti-Trafficking in Persons and the National Action Plan on Forced Labor, which, if actioned and implemented, are good examples of well-managed migration. We do commend these efforts and encourage Malaysia to maintain its existing reform momentum, engaging government, employers, recruitment agencies, civil society, and other stakeholders, including migrants themselves, to make migration safe, regular, and orderly. I thank you for the opportunity to speak at your webinar and wish you a successful and fruitful meeting.
Thank you very much indeed. I think this is really very enlightening, even though a short speech, but Ms. Karima has put us, I think, in a kind of a new paradigm and a new perspective of how we really should be looking at this question and this issue and challenge of migrants. And I think she mentioned many good points. The last one, she was mentioning about the efforts of Malaysia towards dealing with this challenge and the efforts undertaken. And I think she was talking from a global perspective where all the countries and the collective effort of all countries and people and organizations, local and international, the civil society and others, I think they can play a greater role in dealing with this situation, inshallah. I think that's really great, and we thank Her Excellency for this speech. Without any further delay, we move forward in our forum today. Today we have with us a very special guest who is the ambassador of the Kingdom of Belgium, Mr. Pascal. We welcome him once again to our forum today, and we are very grateful for his presence with us. Ambassador Pascal has a very vast experience in his work as a diplomat and also in other capacities. A brief account of his biography will help us see the importance of the contribution of Mr. Pascal to our forum today. Currently, since 2018 until today, he is the ambassador of Belgium to Malaysia here. He worked also as ambassador designate Venezuela, deputy head of protocol, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He worked also as the ambassador to Afghanistan. He also was head of mission, Belgian Diplomatic Office, Kosovo. He was also the Consul General Designate, Bukavu, DRC. Also, he worked in the Embassy of Belgium in UK, First Secretary of the Embassy, Senior Economic Advisor. And also, he worked as National Geographic, in the National Geographic Institute, board member. He also worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as advisor, multilateral affairs, to two ministries of foreign affairs and to the Minister of International Aid. He also served as the board of the Asian Development Bank in Manila, alternate executive director for Belgium, France, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Switzerland. He worked also in another capacity in the Ministry of Finance as an advisor to the Minister of Finance, European issues, in the board of the ASEAN Development Bank also, and many, many other experiences in different capacities. We welcome His Excellency, Mr. Pascal. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor. And good morning, everybody. Good morning, Tatrizul. Good morning, Professor Dato-Seri Anwar Fazal in Penang. And good morning, all panelists and participants. Allow me first to take this opportunity to share with you a special thought to a special gentleman who made IMO today 70 years old, what it is today, and this is a good friend Ambassador William Swing, who was Director General of the IMO between 2008 and 2018, and who died in Kuala Lumpur, age 86 years old, last June. This said, dear professor and dear friends, to be frank and honest with you, when I was preparing this humble intervention, I was a bit embarrassed in the sense what to say meaningful about this so sensitive issue, migration, that has not yet been said. And should I hide myself behind statistics to demonstrate how good we do or not in Belgium or in Europe as such? Should I instead dig into the human dramas to demonstrate how urgent is still today the issues? And I decided to stick and to stick, yes, indeed, to the framework that you provided us today, the humanistic point of view, I would say. So what I will be humbly sharing today with you are truly, really not the words or the thoughts of a specialist, but of an individual. They are not reflecting as such the official position on migration of the Belgian authorities, the Belgian government, or the Belgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They are my own responsibility. And thank you to bear with me on this. The forced displacement of millions of human beings represents an existential crisis of all times, causing suffering in others that we should consider as ourselves. The essence of humanism being recognizing oneself as another. Each human being carries with him a part of the whole of humanity. The migrant is a brother, a sister in humanity. His, her dignity should be, is inalienable. This recognition should be extended to everyone, and in particular to those who are suffering. The society that we might wish to help build is also one where living together means also living all together. It means defending what includes and integrates while respecting the dignity of the person and their difference. This is to promote an evaluation of the other, consider it as an autonomous person recognized free and equal to all others. Human beings are interdependent. So solidarity has its place in the voluntarily assumed bond that links each one to the rest of humanity, implying reciprocal dedication. These principles are not new, and in fact, they are transcribed in the international conventions, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Geneva Convention, International Convention on the Rights of the Child, to which we can add the European Convention for the Protection of Freedoms and Fundamental Rights. They are also codified in many national law as well, asylum, families, students, work laws, etc., etc. Let's just make sure that their application and their effectiveness are exactly and truly the case. Migrants arrive in an established society of which they do not necessarily master the codes or the languages. Multiculturalism, integration, or assimilation, the dominant model depends on the host countries. If we cannot require the migrant to deny their roots, of course, it would be dangerous to lead them to believe that they can evade the laws and values of the host countries. Faced with the complexity of this situation, one might suggest both proposing short-term solutions, alternative to response to the emergencies, and adopting, on the other hand, at the same time, a forward-looking vision in a spirit of affirming humanist values. First, we must endeavor to stop the conflicts generating the greatest and gravest mass displacements. Ending these conflicts must be the top priority of international community and men and women of goodwill. Second, widespread sustainable economic development so that people can safely and prosperously stay in their own homelands. Every child Every girl must have the health care and education they deserve. The literacy of girls has been proven to generate multiple virtuous circles, inter alia, lower fertility, greater health and well-being, and greater financial security. We have to act now. Everyone, each of us, is called upon to change their or outlook on migrants and act accordingly. It's time indeed to support aid associations to help migrants in their effort and teach them the language and culture of their host countries. It's time to favor integration policies, transparent, efficient integration policies. It's time to apply the provisions in force to crack down on smugglers and employers of undeclared foreign workers in an irregular situation. It's time to remind administrative staff of the rules of ethics to promote a dignified and targeted perception. It's time to distinguish between immigration and integration. Questions relating to the reception of new migrants are different from those of the integration of families from previous migrations. It's time to insist on the fact that democratically voted laws apply everywhere and to everyone, to be attentive to ensuring that the equality of all migrants and sedentary alike before the law is respected. It's time to denounce the instrumentalization of migration issues, amalgamations, misinterpretations of words, cliches, and ready-made ideas while taking care not to fall into a counterproductive angelism. It's time also to fight against xenophobic ideas favored by a climate made tense by crisis, global changes, ethnic and religious conflicts and wars. Regularly recall objective data on immigration. Information, correct and timely information is crucial. Historical, demographic, geopolitical, without leaving this word only to immigrant defense associations which have expertise, but whose speech is often inaudible to part of public opinion because it is considered as, or it might be considered as partisan. Now let's think a bit more of the future, a vision for the future. Migration policies must be based on international negotiation. As these are cross-cutting issues, all ASEAN, European or global organizations working in the political, economic, judicial or social fields must integrate migration at the heart of their strategies. Many complementary courses of actions do exist, among which to seek international consistency in the law for migrants. Host governments should facilitate the inclusion of refugee adults in the labor market, a right guaranteed by the 1951 Refugee Convention. The international community should continue to put pressure on those countries that have not yet ratified the Refugee Convention because slave-like child labor is in many crises the single most important factor keeping children outside classrooms. To encourage the contributions of migrant population to their country of origin, which helps to reduce the gap between countries of the South and the North. This can be done through the return of experienced workers, through entrepreneurship or financial transfer, etc. To guarantee as well the rights of migrant women, emphasizing the right to education, to impose genuine free and compulsory education for migrant children, to use information and communication technologies to develop a sense of belonging to the same earth. It is about making people understand that the migratory phenomenon is an integral part of the history of humanity, to make our children aware of being citizens of the world. Demonstrate to developed countries that migration can help them overcome the demographic deficit, that it can promote their international influence when they train migrant students or set up educational exchanges. And last but not least, to anticipate inevitable planetary changes by imagining the habitats and modes of production and consumption of the future, that allow everyone to live better wherever they are. In a nutshell, and in a kind of conclusion, if I may put it like this, everyone, each of us, are called upon to change their or outlook on migrants and act today, right now, accordingly. And it started indeed right now. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this wonderful speech. And I think you give us the nutshell of really what needs to be emphasized when we deal with this migrants and refugee issues. I think His Excellency Mr. Pascal has emphasized the need of the commitment from the governments, I think, and also there should be a kind of global pressure on those countries who are not implementing these conventions and regulations related to migrants. And I think as for the future, he has explained to us how we can valorize the presence of migrants and refugees and return all these challenges into opportunities for the economies of the recipient countries and also the origin countries. And I think for this matter, he has proposed few important things and measures to be undertaken. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Pascal, for your very enlightening speech, even though it is short, but as they say, short but sweet and deep full of insights. Thank you very much indeed. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers in the Zoom and in the YouTube, let's move forward to our highlight of the day. Today we are having with us one personality and one person whose almost all his life is for this cause of serving and caring about people, about communities, about societies, about the unprivileged. We have with us today Dato Sri Anwar Fazal. Brothers and sisters, I'm not sure how much I'm going to tell you about this person, whether I'm going to do right to him or not, but I will just try, brothers and sisters. Dato Anwar Fazal is, I can say, a catalyst, a multiplier and accelerator of ideas and social movements, with a great passion for pioneering local and global citizens networks on public interest, issues affecting peace, and also life of people and communities. He is the founder and key player in over a dozen local and global citizens networks, including the Consumers Association of Penang here in Malaysia, Transparency International Malaysia, International Baby Food Action Network, Pesticides Action Network, Health Action International, and World Alliance for Breastfeeding Action. He was also president of several worldwide organizations, including the International Organization of Consumers Union, the Hague, Netherlands, and Environment Liaison Center International, Nairobi, Kenya. He initiated many great ideas and several popular mobilization days, including World Migrant Day, which is this year, 2021, is on the 18th of December. He also initiated World Breastfeeding Week, 1 to 7 August. He also initiated World Consumer Rights Day, March 15. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, for his work, Dato Anwar has received the right Livelihood Award, popularly known as the Alternative Nobel Prize, the United Nations Environment Programme Global 500 Honor, Mother Earth Hall of Fame, the Malaysian Government's Langkawi Environment Award, the Malaysian Government National Consumer Advocate Award, and the Gandhi King Ikeda Community Builder Peace Award. Brothers and sisters, let's welcome Dato' Fazal to deliver his speech. Dato', can we just unmute the sound?
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Abdul Aziz, for those very nice comments of reminding me of the many, many years of work that I have been engaged in for the betterment of the community. Citizens of the universe, children of Mother Earth, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum, may peace be on you. I am a child of migrants. I am a Malaysian. I am a citizen of the world, inspired by the humanity that Islam promotes, of compassion, of peace, and for justice. Thank you for the honor of sharing some thoughts on this very historic occasion, this celebration of our humanity, of respect and dignity to our fellow brothers and sisters from all over the world who have to migrate and search for a new home. I want to use this occasion with you to share just 5 stories that show how much Malaysia and out of Kuala Lumpur, much has been done to play a historic role in this legacy. And that will be etched in our records of amazing history of migration in Malaysia, because we have been that kind of nation, a nation of diversity and multiculturalism. We are in a place where monsoons meet, and where monsoons meet, ships came from different directions and 2 different oceans. People had to pass through this area to go from one ocean to another ocean. We were millions of years ago in a very special place that was called Sundaland. We were all one huge community, the Southeast Asian community, until the ocean rose and separated us to 17,000 islands in Indonesia, 7,000 odd islands in Philippines, and made us an amazing complex, this region of diversity that was just unbelievable and unparalleled anywhere else. We were part of this place that used to be called Sundaland. So it was called Sundaland, and I always tell people, they ask me where I'm from, I said I'm from Sundaland. And then they have to look up the Wikipedia to find out where this is. These 5 things that I mentioned, it was 25 years ago that we initiated a regional consultation when I was working in the United Nations office as head of governance for Asia and the Pacific. We organized this regional consultation on the impact of transboundary migration on urbanization. And this led up to the setting up of an informal Asian Partnership on International Migration, APIM. And this is the first time that one of the things we realized in social movements is that we must build up the spirit of solidarity, which His Excellency Pascual just spoke about. That so many people are doing, we have to map up where they are, we have to make the connections with them, and then we begin to share and strengthen and build the kind of strength that we need to make the change that is necessary. And the network, APIM, also build up a comprehensive plan. It was an informal network of light, action-oriented, participatory partnership that were going to help the groups throughout the region. Thirdly, it was our idea out of here in Malaysia about developing the International Day of Solidarity with Migrant Workers. And we said, we are not going to wait for the UN. We are going to declare that date as the Day of the International Solidarity. And I organized a meeting on the rooftop of the United Nations building in Manila. And we chose that place particularly because it was also a world center for migration outside to other countries and had a very special interest. And we had the International Labour Organization having a regional office. We had the International Organization of Migration, IOM, which played a very role and incidentally was born in Brussels, where His Excellency Pascual comes from. There were representatives of the Philippines government, including a lady who later became president of the Philippines. There were representatives of key civil society people, including the Asian Migration Center that was located here, and also the Scalabrini Migration Center, which was supported by church organizations. What was wonderful that having taken the action and announced the International Day of Solidarity, we managed to persuade several governments to take it up quickly to the United Nations. And within 2 years, the General Assembly of the UN made that day a formally recognized United Nations International Day. Our network then began also to ensure that we can now build on that participatory, light, action-oriented work. And we did a beautiful source book, a very rare, the first kind of encyclopedic work on understanding international migration. In this, we give you all the background documents, we give you ideas of all the groups that are working all over the world on this issue, ideas for action that you can take, including this little symbol here, the mandala, which I drew, which is an Indian tradition, where you draw up a graphic from which there is unity coming out and describing what the issue is and how the core issues that are around, what are the new issues that you can take all over, what are the fundamental elements inside. And what is particularly interesting is what these fundamentals were that nearly a quarter of a century we talked about. And they were about migrant workers. They are a resource. Migrant workers, they deserve justice. Migrant workers, treat them with dignity, the word that we are also using on that. And advocacy, information and research, empowerment, and also networking as that. And then looking at new partners and new issues and different kinds of activities so that we can link up with each other. And this book then was printed and shared. We printed it as part of the network of international migration. And also, one of the co-authors, incidentally, is still working here in the United Nations. He's actually with the United Nations Family Planning Association. Now, I think heading the Pacific program, Saira Shamin, who did a lot of the research work and the compilation for this work. The fifth thing is not very well known, that it was a Kuala Lumpur-based group called Tenaga Nita, and its founder, the late Irene Fernandez, whose activity to work with foreign workers to make sure that the abuse was stopped and fairness was implemented, who had the kind of courage to resist also the kind of bad actions that were being taken by both employers and sometimes agencies that were very neglectful and weak. She received the first global recognition on international migration issues, that the first kind of global recognition of an activist on on this issue actually came from Malaysia, came from Kuala Lumpur. She received the Right Livelihood Award, which is popularly known as the Alternative Nobel Prize. The group continues to be a major civil society entity in this country and also globally. I said I am a child of migrants. I am a Malaysian. I am a citizen of the world, and I've inspired as a Muslim to live for compassion, for justice, and for peace. I'd like to share with you several stories that were also my stories. When I grew up, which was, I was born in 1941, that makes me 80 years old, octogenarian, as they will say. I lived in a village. I moved to a town which was called Everlasting Peace. I moved to an island which was a multicultural, multiracial community where people from all over the world came as refugees, entrepreneurs, even slaves at the earlier era. This was the island of Penang, which recently, a decade ago now, actually got the UNESCO heritage site for its multiculturalism, for its multiracialism, for its multi-religious aspect, and to live and grow up in a place where this was the essence, that we were a state of migrants, a state of multiversity from all over the world, that they came and made their lives. And we have a wonderful street which we call the Street of Harmony, where a church, a Chinese temple, a mosque, a Hindu temple, and all the different kinds of things are all together in one street. And I had the pleasure of taking President Kalam from India, the late President of India, for a tour of this, and he wrote a beautiful poem of how Penang was the center. And growing up in this place, and when I went to the university, I was invited to go to the United States for a conference, and I had to, of course, apply for something called a passport. I went to apply for a passport, and they told me, sorry, you are not a citizen of this country. That was a shock to me. Here was I, president of the National Union of Students of Malaysia. And I said, what happened? I mean, I was born, I grew up in this area, and suddenly I am not a citizen. They said, you are entitled to be, but you never applied. And you had to formally apply. And I was so busy enjoying life that maybe I just didn't apply. I applied, I got it quickly, I got my passport, and I traveled to the United States. So when I traveled to the United States and arrived there, they said, I was going actually to Canada. I was not going to the United States, but the plane was going through the United States. And when I arrived there, they said, where's your visa for the United States? I said, what visa for the United States? I'm going to Canada. And they said, no, you're passing through the United States. You must have a visa. And so they detained me very nicely on the plane itself and said, you're not to leave until everybody has left. And then they take me and put me in a room. And then everybody boards the plane. And then they put me on the plane as the last person. I was quite pleased to be taken care of, to get on the plane and out the plane. And when I finally left on another airport in Chicago, they left behind a slip of paper in the passport. And that passport was unforgettable, that slip of paper. Who here believes in aliens? I like to tell you, I have a certificate from the United States of America saying that I am an alien. And the card says, alien to be detained during transit and to be removed via such and such a flight. And that was a very interesting experience at age 21 to learn about what it means actually to be a person, what is home, what is the world, what is passports, and everything else. Yeah? And of course, I mean, I became passionate about this particular issue and learned about how in history, the amazing practices of how we had the African slaves and, how they were treated and the migrants, they were even called the strange fruit. They were not even regarded as human beings. And then you had the Yellow Peril, where Chinese immigrants in Canada, in the United States, in Australia, in many other countries were targeted as a dangerous community, because they were very hardworking, and they came there and they started their laundry, they worked very hard and did all kinds of things in the place. And so this kind of history then has sadly again now resurged to racism, to bigotry, and white supremacy, and also the story of the native people, the indigenous people, and how they were with the conquistadors, the colonial emperors, empires, how they destroyed and killed literally and eliminated these people. So we have this story, and at the moment we are also in a kind of stage now with the epidemic, with the wars that continue, the conflicts, climate, and all kinds of different dangers that are actually making our lives difficult. So we need that solidarity that His Excellency Pascual was talking of. We need to move together forward. And I always say we never forget the Panchasila of power. And the power of one, how much you can do. Little people all over the world have made a difference. The power of many, network, get together. And the power of, you can say, universality, our own spiritual traditions, treat people like you would like others to treat you. Remember also all the UN agreements that are there. They become standards for us to campaign for and make for. Think of the world. Think of yourself as a world citizen. Think of yourself of plannerhood, and think about how these things may happen to you one day yourself. And then, of course, the power of information. Now, anyone, anytime, anywhere, you can make contact with. And it's amazing now how we can together now help each other. And like sometimes we get suddenly a message of someone who is in distress, and in some migrant somewhere in Malaysia. And we can now go there and help them meet the end. And fifthly, of course, is the power of success. Let us never forget that we must always share successes. There's a wonderful book called Blessed Unrest, of how civil society and individuals and so on make change all over the world. And we don't celebrate those things because each of those places where there's a success, we must make that story known, that where for people who say it cannot be done, it shouldn't be done, say, get out of the way. People are already doing it and people want to do it. And then if we share these stories, there's amazing stories everywhere. People are making changes, and let us celebrate the successes, celebrate the stories. And let us also in that solidarity promote what I call the Panchasila of values. To have conscience, I call them the 5 C's, the conscience, the courage, competence, compassion, the golden rule, treat other people like you'll be treated, and creativity of how we can engage and do various things. I like to also share 5 projects that might be interesting for us as a community to begin to act on. And one is, don't forget 3 United Nations days. Make them a big celebration, make them a way to connect with the world, make them a way to connect with everyone and connect with the distressed, the difficult, and the people who have got the energy and also the resources to get together, do it. World Harmony Week in February, it's a whole week. There's World Day of Refugees, and then it's of course the World Day of Migrants. Celebrate all these things, make them all beacons of light that will bring together communities for action. Then I think also have an annual lecture on especially on migrant, and get eminent people who can tell you successful stories, who are doing things. People like the founders of the international instruments, people who have made transformative change, people who have ideas for the future. And we have this manual I talked about. We can work together. Tan Sri Zul mentioned how they are working in Holland with a toolkit. I think that toolkit and this document can be a project of the IIUM, and we can do a new edition of this book together with a toolkit that we can share to people. And for those people who say, you want to do something, just read this, and make this also an email book that can be available to anyone, anytime. One of the other things that we want also to see is, how do you become a change maker? And we have developed a book called the Change Maker, Source Book for Change Makers, all the kinds of ideas that you can actually take action, 99 ways to do this. Who are the inspiring leaders in the place? What are some of the formats and issues that we can all take together, that we can look? Where are the contacts that are there? And this was done by the Right Livelihood College, which I founded a decade ago, which is based at the University of Bonn. And this again is a document. It's also available email. Could be something we can work together with IUM, and we can get a version that can actually create the culture of change making. That means people who say it cannot be done. No, you be a change maker, and being a change maker should be one of the things that the young people of IUM should be a part of. It's part of their character. And the fifth thing is celebrating the cultures. Tan Sri Zul also mentioned how cultures bring us together. The diet of our foods in Malaysia. I was very annoyed at one time where one government in this country said, oh, hawkers the migrant workers must not be allowed to sell food and work at hawkers because they are undermining our hawkers in this country. Come on, all our food comes from different countries, it's diverse, and we have different kinds of things, and you are trying to stop migrant workers. Migrant workers also not only are responsible, their countries are responsible for some of the dishes that we have, they will also take our special dishes, laksa and murtabak, and go there back to their own countries and do it. And there was a story beautifully of a Rohingya who had to leave, forced leaving of Myanmar, and moved to Malaysia, and stayed here for a while, and then got an opportunity to go to the United States in Milwaukee. And you know what he did? He started a food truck. And what is he selling? He's selling Malaysian food, murtabak, and rotis and different kinds of things that are there. And it's such an amazing story that over 1.5 decades, a person like that gets absorbed with this culture, takes it and even shares it in, again, a remote town in the United States. So we can work together to do all this. And I like to end by sharing with you a very special Sufi poem. And this Sufi poem is by Hazrat Inayat Khan. It was written nearly a century ago. And it tells us, how we can be resilient, a very important word, how we will never give up. We will never give up. And when he said, I asked for strength and God gave me difficulties to make me strong. I asked for wisdom and God gave me problems to learn how to solve. I asked for prosperity. God gave me a brain and brawn to work. I asked for courage. God gave me dangers to overcome. I asked for love, and God gave me people to help. I asked for favors. God gave me opportunities. I received nothing I wanted, yet I received everything that I needed. And I hope our community will move on this. Remember, I have a little poem that I would like to share as my conclusion. And this is, remember, we are all one. We are one humanity. We are one multiversity. We all drink from one water. We all breathe from one air. We rise from one ocean and we live under one sky. Remember, we are one. The newborn baby cries the same everywhere. The laughter of children is universal. Everyone's blood is red. And our hearts, they beat the same song. Remember, we are one. Peace be on you, brothers and sisters. Peace be on you. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Let us not forget that all of us We are all, some stage or other, children of migrants. Let us all work together as citizens of the world and work what Islam also tells us, with compassion, with peace, and with justice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Dato Fazal. MashaAllah, Tabarakallah. At this age of 80, and you are telling us all this wisdom, and you are showing us the way and leading the way. I really thank you for all this experience. I think you put an experience of over 50 years or 60 years in this 20 to 25 minutes. I think this is really great, and we learned from you just now that we can do it, and we have the power to do it. It's a matter of solidarity and togetherness. It's a matter of changing the mindsets and cultures. It's a matter of celebrating our cultures, our human dignity. It's a matter of initiating and trying, and many other things that you have mentioned, Dato Fazal, in your very beautiful speech. A lot of issues, a lot of topics, a lot of multi ideas that you put in your speech. Hopefully, inshallah, our people in Malaysia and elsewhere in the world can learn from all these insights and views. And I think you put it correctly when you say that we need to become agent of change. And you have given a lot of examples from yourself and from others that people who are action-oriented, they did wonders, and they changed, and they helped many people. And I think you ended with a great point, and you say that we are all human, we are all dignified, we are all here to share and cherish this common struggle to save people and to save humanity. Thank you, Dato Fazal, for all these ideas and views, and we really thank you for mentioning showing the two books. And I think it's really a great opportunity to create more bridges, more projects between the university and other universities and the civil society activists, organizations. And I think that's really what is need to be done at this stage, in this day where we are celebrating this International Migrant Day in 2021. Thank you once again, Dato. Alhamdulillah, we move forward to our next speaker, our sister Wan Mimi Zarina. Now we move to the real practical world where our organizations, whether the UN and the other civil societies, organizations are really facing the challenges down there and looking at these issues of migrants and dealing with them on a daily basis. We have our sister with us here. We are very glad to have her with us today. Sister Wan Mimi Zarina Azmin, Head of Education Section, Unhcr Malaysia. A brief account of the biography of our sister for the sake of our viewers who are from other parts of the world. Our sister joined the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, in 2008, and was appointed as UNHCR Malaysia's Head of Education in 2016 after accruing 8 years of experience with various units, including the Registration, Community Development, and Social Protection Fund, a special vehicle under the Livelihood Unit. Her work focuses on advocacy, coordination, provision of support, and targeted actions aimed at enabling access and improving quality of education for refugee children and youth in Malaysia. From early childhood to high education. Sister Mimi holds a degree in economics from the University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, and prior to joining the humanitarian sector, had accumulated more than 11 years of corporate experience in the private sector, including in banking, public relations, business management, and motorsports. Unhcr Malaysia works with more than 30 partners and the refugee community themselves in enabling access to education. For some 14,000 refugee children and youth, including some 70 currently enrolled in post-secondary and high education courses. Sister Mimi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor. Salam and good morning, everyone. Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak. I see that his screen is still here, even though he's in another meeting. Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Bahut, His Excellency Mr. Pascal Gregoire, Professor Datuk Sri Dr. Anwar Fazal, Mr. Adrian Anthony Pereira, and Dr. Maulana Akbar Shah. So the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, was created in 1950 during the aftermath of the Second World War and given 3 years to complete its work and then disbanded. Yet today, over 70 years later, the UNHCR is still hard at work, protecting and assisting refugees around the world, serving a staggering population of 82.4 million of forcibly displaced persons, of which 26.6 million are refugees. In Malaysia, there are some 180,000 refugees and asylum seekers registered with the UNHCR office, out of which some 38,500 are refugee and asylum seeking children of school-going age. Of this, the majority, with 19,300 or 50% of the children are of the primary school-going age, while 6,200 or 16% are adolescents of secondary school-going age. Without an enabling legal and protection environment resulting from Malaysia not being a signatory to the 1951 Convention on Status of Refugees or the 1967 Protocol, and not having any legal or administrative framework to manage refugees and asylum seekers, they face challenges in assessing basic needs such as decent work, affordable healthcare, and education. The protracted nature of such conditions, coupled with the socioeconomic and health consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, has negatively impacted the resilience of these refugee communities, affecting their ability to mitigate and recover from shocks and stresses. Sadly, in a world increasingly shaped by climate change, poverty, and conflict, the common misconception that refugees are a burden to host states persists, despite numerous studies that have proven otherwise. A study conducted in 2014 by the Refugee Studies Center at the University of Oxford, titled Refugee Economies Rethinking Popular Assumptions, found that the presence of refugees boosts a local economy significantly as a result of additional purchasing power, the creation of employment, and the provision of human capital. The research suggests that whether refugees are a benefit or a burden depends on the policies of the host states, and that when they are given the right to work, access to capital, and educational opportunities, they are likely to have the greatest impact. Another study published in 2018 by the Paris School of Economics echoes the same, as it was found through the analysis of 30 years worth of data from 15 Western European countries, including Belgium, refute suggestions that refugees pose a financial burden. It is found that refugees benefit their host nations' economies within 5 years of arrival, where the overall strength and sustainability of the country's economy improves and unemployment rates drop. So the need to valorize refugees is way overdue, yet refugees remain at the fringes, excluded from national agendas, even when it is clear that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, for which Malaysia stands among the state parties that adopted and pledged its commitment, cannot be achieved without taking into account the rights and needs of refugees. The principles that underpin the 2030 Agenda, notably the leaving no one behind and ensuring human rights for all, provides a powerful basis for inclusion. The declaration implicitly and explicitly notes the need to include refugees in paragraph 4 and paragraph 23, as well as thanks to a new indicator on refugees approved by the UN Statistical Commission in March 2020. In support of the 2030 Agenda, it is outlined in the UNHCR strategic directions that UNHCR will build on the commitment of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to leave no one behind, and on the SDGs to promote the inclusion of refugees, the internally displaced and stateless people in national development frameworks. The New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants that came into being a year after the 2030 Agenda was launched, for which Malaysia joined the international community in adopting in September 2016, led to the Global Compact on Migrants and the Global Compact on Refugees, an essential tool for international solidarity in ensuring that refugees and the countries and communities that host large numbers of refugees are not left behind. With inclusivity, these complementary frameworks, the 2030 Agenda, the Global Compact, can together ensure that refugees are not left behind in development processes and that displacement is addressed through inclusive and comprehensive approaches. A key element to these complementary frameworks is education, which has a long history as an international priority. As the debate over valorizing refugees continue, it must be acknowledged that the need for inclusion of refugee children and youth into the national education system sits at its core. Education is both a human right in itself and its indispensable means of realizing other human rights. For this reason, education sits at the core of refugee protection and enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as other conventions, including the 1981 Convention on the Rights of the Child. The 2030 Agenda further drives this home with SDG Goal 4, which is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The multiplier effect of education on the other goals, on eradicating poverty, hunger, removing inequalities, and on promoting gender equality and economic growth, illustrates education's important role. So UNHCR has been actively engaged in the SDG 4 planning and roll out at the global level since the beginning. Along with 5 other UN agencies and the World Bank, UNHCR was a co-convener of the World Education Forum, which was held in 2015 in Incheon, Korea. And we also participated in the world in drafting the Education 2030 Framework for Action. As a co-convener of the WEF, UNHCR is committed to working closely with government counterparts and partners to progress towards the SDG 4 goal and targets by 2030. The New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants pinpoints education as a critical element of the international refugee response, because education brings together 2 important disciplines, namely human rights and human development. At the heart of the Global Compact is the idea that refugees should be included in the communities from the very beginning, especially in education. So this is further strengthened with the UNHCR Global Education Strategy, the Refugee Education 2030, a strategy for refugee inclusion, and also by the 15 by 30 roadmap. UNHCR and partners are committed to the 15 by 30 roadmap. The target is to ensure that 15% of young refugee women and men, or approximately 500,000 of them in total, can access education, higher education by 2030. Since the launch of this target, enrollment in higher education has increased to 5% from the 3% that was reported in 2019. But this represents such transformational change for thousands of refugees and their communities. Still though, this is extremely low as compared to the 37 global higher education access rate. If these current trends continue, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, more refugee children and youth will be absorbed into out-of-school statistics, including disproportionately large numbers of girls, young women, and students with disabilities. The average length of time a refugee spends in exile is about 20 years. 20 years is more than an entire childhood and the average education lifespan, and represents a significant portion of a person's productive working years. Given this sobering picture, it is critical that we think beyond a refugee's basic survival. Although some protracted refugee situations have lasted more than 2 decades, refugee education is largely financed from emergency funds, leaving little room for long-term planning. Traditionally, refugee education does not feature in national development plans or in education sector planning. And refugees' educational access and attainment are rarely tracked to national monitoring systems, meaning that refugee children and youth are not only disadvantaged in terms of access, but their educational needs and achievements remain largely invisible. In Malaysia, refugee children remain excluded from the national education system, and the enrollment rate of refugee children in primary education is particularly low, at just 47%, as compared to the global average of 77%, and the 98% that is among local Malaysian children. While the enrollment rate of adolescents, of refugees and asylum seekers at the secondary education level is only at 27%. This is compared to the global average of 31 and to the 85 among local Malaysian adolescents. The opportunity for refugee students to pursue tertiary education is even more limited in Malaysia, considering at the moment only some 70 youths, and this is less than 0.1% of the population here, are enrolled in tertiary education with UNHCR's facilitation, as compared to the 5% that I mentioned earlier globally. This needs to change. The returns on investing in education are immense and far-reaching, and the positive impact of education is undeniable. It permeates through every segment and level of society across gender and age. Children are children first, and regardless of status and background, they need education. Education is not a luxury to be put on hold during times of displacement, but an essential component of refugee children's lives. The lack of education for refugee children impacts not only the lives of the children themselves, but also their family, their community, and the development and progress of entire nations, including the collective efforts to realize the 2030 agenda. Like everyone else, refugees value education and place it high on their priorities. Education enlightens refugees, enabling them to learn about themselves and the world around them, while striving to rebuild their lives and communities wherever they may be. Access to quality education is crucial to the self-reliance of refugees. Education empowers by giving refugees the knowledge and skills to live productive, fulfilling, and independent lives, strengthening community resilience. Education provides knowledge and skill development that strengthens the capacity of refugees to be agents of social transformation, and is essential to understanding and promoting gender equality and sustainable peaceful coexistence. Education provides a sense of normalcy and predictability for children and youth affected by trauma. Contributes to human capital development. It provides opportunities for individual earnings, employment, and covering essential needs such as health and food and shelter. For families, it provides a sense of hope for the next generation and improves social cohesion with the host community. It is also essential for durable solutions. Quality education is an important public good, driving economic growth, innovation, civic engagement, and reduced poverty. During displacement, the medium-term benefits of education for refugees include the knowledge and skills that can contribute to stability, reconstruction, and peace building in their home countries once they are able to go home. So while they reside in Malaysia, refugees are important assets and skill-based workers who actively participate in, as well as contribute to, the local economy and development agenda, whether recognized or not. Education will also enable them to contribute towards post-conflict nation building, as I mentioned before, in the cases of voluntary repatriation, and ensure better integration into society in resettlement countries. Thus, enabling refugees' resilience goes hand in hand with achieving durable solutions for them. For refugees and host communities are better able to meet their essential needs, enjoy the human rights, and live with dignity. So within this context, and taking into consideration the government of Malaysia's commitment to the 2030 agenda, the principle of leaving no one behind, as well as its endorsement of the Global Compact on Refugee through the New York Declaration, the Unhcr representation will continue to engage with relevant counterparts in order to build a sustainable national asylum system, prioritizing the gradual inclusion of persons of concern in national systems and the domestic social protection framework, while in parallel continue to support basic protection and support services by catalyzing strategic collaboration with NGOs to improve livelihoods, affordable healthcare, and empower refugees to access to education. UNHCR wants to see sustained, predictable investment and a holistic approach to supporting refugee protection in refugee hosting countries such as Malaysia. Solutions that will enable refugees to be self-reliant and resilient, to be able to also contribute to the Malaysian local economy and play a role in ensuring the prosperity and continued development of Malaysia, be it in terms of access to education, which is at par with the public schools recognized by the Ministry of Education, opportunities for vocational and skills training, and access to legal employment, as well as access to affordable healthcare. We can certainly collectively help to ensure that this marginalized group be given the appropriate and necessary chance to also become part of the backbone of the local society and economy while waiting for their durable solution. Education is recognized as having one of the highest long-term returns on investment of all the development goals. So why not invest more in education? The inclusion of quality education should not be simply seen as an SDG, but also as an essential mode of instruction that cuts across all the SDGs. And to effectively promote the education agenda, the International Development Goal on education must continue to support increases in both educational access and attainment. Improving the quality as well as the quantity of education is essential to sustainable development, as few other areas offer a greater return in investment as qualitative upgrades in education. If we neglect this task, we will be failing to nurture peace and prosperity. Beyond that, it has shown us that a solution cannot be effective if it does not reach everyone. The failure to provide education for refugee children can be hugely damaging, not only to these individuals and their families and societies, it's perpetuating cycles of conflict and yet more forced displacement in future, guaranteed. It means lost opportunities for peaceful and sustainable development in our world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Wan Mimi, for this wonderful expose on this very important topic. I think you have taken us from the theoretical, academic, analysis of the situation to the real practical situation and context. And I think one of the very important ideas that you ended with is that not dealing and not appreciating and not putting this challenge into its right context and ecosystem, it will have many negative consequences, not only on the refugees, but I think the entire cycle of the development of the society. I think that's something which is really very important, as you have highlighted clearly how education becomes in the center of dealing with this phenomena of migrants and refugees, and how education becomes a leveler to give hope and put this group of people in the context so that we valorize them and they become part and parcel of the entire ecosystem locally and also in the international context. You have mentioned a lot of important ideas and suggestions. Hopefully, inshallah, we will take up these matters, and as our Prof. Zul mentioned earlier, that there is a very urgent need to enhance the collaboration between the universities, and in particular here IIUM and your organization and other organization working on this. We need really to build on these bridges and this collaboration so that we can help as much as we can. And as our rector mentioned, and even he offered and he said, we need more refugee to come into the university and learn and earn their degrees, and then they become, I think, much more fruitful and agents of change, inshallah. Thank you, Sister Mimi, for this very insightful presentation. Let's move forward so that we save our time. I think we are on time according to our schedule. We have another two presentations, inshallah, from two well-known brothers and activists. We will give the floor to Mr. Adrian Pereira. I think many Malaysians and also people in the region here knows him. And he is the executive director and co-founder of North-South Initiative, a human rights and social justice oriented organization based here in Malaysia. And they are doing many activities related to build a society that prioritizes social justice via solidarity and building a bridge and empowering these type of groups that need our support and our solidarity. I think without any, he has a lot of experience here in his CV related to his work and voicing out the things related to dealing with these issues, and the organization he heads is engaging the business sector, includes helpline systems, smartphones applications, remediations, hostel inspections, social audit and dialogues, strategic litigations, and a lot of other things that they use to deal with this situation. Mr. Adrian, the floor is yours.
Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you, Professor Abdulaziz. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be on the same panel with titans of the social justice and human rights movement. I'd like to thank everyone for this opportunity. I see some of my gurus here also, like Professor Anwar Fazal. Thanks for inspiring generations and generations of activists to continue the struggle for a better society. So my name is Adrian Pereira, and I'm a founder and director at an NGO called North-South Initiative. It's not an NGO that we planned to set up 10 years ago. It started very organically with different communities, uh, migrant workers, refugees, talking to us and trying to look for solutions. And also part of my work, besides labor, I also work with communities in conflict. So I do some work with the people in Patani, and I know UIA or IIUM has a lot of students from Patani who have actually done their internship with me. So I was able to connect migration with the different aspects, not just social, cultural, but also the economical aspect, especially in the global supply chain, but also as a result of conflict. And today we also look at migration from the lens of climate change and natural disasters. So it's very interesting that we have the spotlight on Malaysia. Geopolitically and geophysically, it's a very in a very unique location and situation. So it's fair to say that Malaysia can be one of the case studies. We can call it a case study in the academic sense, but make no mistakes, the communities that we work with are human beings. They have dignities, and it's our duty to ensure that we bring the different aspects of ensuring that these communities can live to the fullest of their dignity in different manners. So it's a good team of different actors working together. While on paper these solutions may seem very clear, log frames and proposals. I've done this for the last 15 years, but when you bring these solutions to the ground, it's not so easy. There are different elements which come into play. In Malaysia, we have a history of being a country of immigrants. Me myself personally, my mom is of Indian origin, and till today she holds her passport, Indian citizenship, with pride. But she has learned to live with Malaysian society, and she has been an inspiration to me to look at citizenship in a global lens, like what Dr. Anwar Fazal said. We are global citizens. And part of my work, which is looking at the global supply chain, has given me an opportunity to critically look at how Malaysia addresses the situation. And in the context of post-COVID-19 recovery, there's a big challenge in how the industry is going to look at the migrant community, whether we are as equal partners in coming out of this situation, or we fall back into the vicious cycles of exploitation. If you look at the different reports by the global community, for example, our track record is not so good. For example, the American Trafficking in Persons report, we are now on tier 3 after being on the tier 2 watch list for 3 years. And there are different sanctions on our supply chain. And I'm very sad to say that the sanctions on the supply chain includes government-linked companies. So, we have to address the morality of what we are trying to do in our economic recovery. Are we going to compromise or have or look at the migrants, the migrant workers as collateral for us to develop? And why I think IIUM has an important role, because you will have to bring the econometrics together with the morality of the equation to solve this complex situation and find a way where we can come out of the economic injustice together. So it's a challenge now for not just Malaysia but ASEAN. who is also looking at free trade agreements on how to do this in the proper way. Now, after working with the supply chains for almost 10 years, I don't think it's going to happen naturally. Malaysians, as captains of industries, consumers, consultants in the academic world, I know there are many consultants in the academic world who sit on boards of these companies. You have to make the right decision, and if our moral compass is not clear, we will fall back into exploiting migrants again. Now, it's not that everything is gloomy or dark. I think we mentioned, some of the speakers mentioned that migration is to be celebrated, and we have looked at the example of food, and before the post-colonial or post-independence borders were drawn, people had a different worldview of what traveling is about exchanges, about bringing culture. But the global political climate is not like that today. It's very different. I think even the European Union, despite looking developing it at the core and with more at the core, finds externally and internally. And ASEAN is also learning from the experience, but we are not learning fast enough. So while we want to celebrate cultures, we are also struggling with our own local politics and the issue of migrants. There is going to be a notion that there's not enough resource to share, and this is going to push Malaysians to respond, Malaysians as competitors to this resource in the COVID recovery. But it depends on the academic world. How do we explain the myths? How do we explain the myths that we can have a win-win solution in migration? But hi, I'm sorry. Where did I stop? I just dropped out.
Go ahead, Mr. Adrian. We hear you.
Yeah. So it comes back to the academic world to help our politicians, our economists, to come up with the with a formula that explains to Malaysians that we are not really competing with the migrants. There was an Ilo report in 2019. Actually, it was first done in 2011, and about 9 years later, it was repeated, where the public perception towards migrants is still very bizarre. It's very bizarre because it's based on misinformation. It's based on not understanding the rights framework, and as much as we want to look at the academic aspect and the cultural aspect, the social aspect of migration, there is a rights framework that we need to follow. The challenge of translating this into the language which the grassroots can understand is vital. This is not automatic. This is not an automatic process. It takes a lot of hard work. It needs the econometrics needs to be very clear. We have to make certain difficult decisions on reducing the dependency on migrant labor. The other dilemma that we are facing is things like the minimum wage. Now, the only reason why the minimum wage is still so low in Malaysia, it's about 1,200 ringgit, is because the ready availability of labor migrants to be exploited by these big supply chains, and we need to think how to control that, despite having policies and laws in place to govern that. The people in power don't seem to have the political will to change that. So it comes back to us now. In the perspective of social justice, the migrant and refugee community, they don't need charity. If their rights are given, if their right to work is given, they won't need our charity. They would easily assimilate into society without competing, so-called competing with resource. And that's where, we have to relook at our own perspectives of racism, challenging the myths, the fake news about migrants. Unfortunately, we have a few very politically sponsored medias who are portraying migrants in very shocking negative perception. So we don't have the counter movement of correcting what is right or wrong. And I hope and I'm very happy that in the interns that I get from IIUM, they have always been very proactive in helping build the bridge between the civil society and the community. So I hope that with all the thinkers in this forum, we will think of a formula on how to get this done in a very clear and precise manner, capitalizing on the cultural exchanges, the cultural benefits that come with migration, but finding the balance when it comes to labor, when it comes to the employment sector. And hopefully when some of you who are sitting on boards, different board of companies, or even having your own startups, you need to understand that using forced labor is wrong. And at the global level, while ILO has very clear indicators spelled out, the local authorities are just starting to talk about it. There's an action plan, but when you interact with the authorities, they may not have the clearest idea. And this is where the academic world comes into place, as not just as consultants, but as auditors. You come in as researchers who can produce papers which are focused on pro-human, pro-migrants, pro-refugees. Unfortunately, in our work, we have come across journals and papers from the academic world that promote the status quo, promote the theories that are used to keep exploitation continuing. So at the North-South Initiative, we look at the role of universities in a very serious manner, and this cannot setting the standards cannot be done in an academic or technical way. There are moral issues, and I think it was important that Dr. Zul's example of the Islamic theology to help us understand that there is a spiritual element in understanding that the migrants and the refugees are to be treated with dignity. And as a Catholic myself, we have seen Pope Francis and the Vatican constantly struggle to remind not just Catholics but everyone that we live in a globalized world, that you need to give and treat everyone with the respect. So that's a bit of my analysis. The topic is so broad, and I'm sorry, I'm not really trained to, in an academic way, to put these topics in a categoric manner. I still have a lot to learn, but anytime at the service of everyone in looking in how to solve these problems. We just had one experience in the global supply chain where there was huge amounts of forced labor, and instead of solving the problems, what the brand or the buyers do is they cut and run, and it's running away from the problem instead of solving it. So we'll take many years more to come up with good formulas. Let's not give up on this. Let's continue to celebrate migrants. We also take a few reflective moments to remember in the floods in Shah Alam and Klang that migrants were also affected. There were a few positive stories of how migrants kicked into action to help Malaysians, and I think these beautiful stories need to be amplified by the media, instead of just the dark and gloomy stories. So yeah, thank you, and hope to get a chance to work with everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian. Thank you very much indeed for highlighting these important issues. I think you have mentioned very clearly some challenges, some issues, and I think mostly they need to be attended to so that we can really deal with this situation with an integrated approach and value-based. And I think talking about the global supply chain and how somehow it contributes also to more issues and challenges instead of solving the problems. I think this is a very important point that we really need to look at and stress, especially for the policymakers and those who are dealing practically with this issue. I really thank you for your important points. You raised many good points, and you don't need to be, I think, an academician like us to really convince us with the several points that you brought in. I really thank you for that, and inshallah we will be following up on this. Alhamdulillah, we come to our last speaker, Dr. Maulana. Today we have with us Dr. Maulana Akbar Shah, who is a Myanmar citizen and an assistant professor in IIUM in the faculty, the Kulliyah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, FIDS, and has a lot of experience in dealing with the refugees, especially Myanmar community, and his contributions are really instrumental in this area, and his experience is very important to shed some lights on the practical situation and the way forward in dealing with this. His CV here is a long one, but I can just mention a few things here. He is engaged in many organizations as head of many committees. For example, he worked as the president of Myanmar Muslim Intellectual Forum, volunteered at International Advanced Islamic Study, IAIS, Malaysia, advisor for Myanmar Muslim community in Malaysia here, and many other things that he has done. And it shows his vast experience with dealing with the migrant, especially his own community. Dr. Maulana, the floor is yours, and I think we are on time, inshallah. Go ahead.
Shukran jazilan, Prof. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Prof, I share the slide. Can you see the slide, Prof?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Doctor. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. And shukran jazilan to everyone, and particularly our Rector in International Islamic University, Prof. Zulkifli, and also our His Excellency, Mr. Pascal Grigoris, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Belgium, and also our mentors, keynote speaker, Prof. Dr. Sari Anwar Faisal, and also the UNHCR representative, Sister Wan Mimi, and also Brother Adrian from the North-South Initiative, and of course our very dear beloved Ustad, Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Pargos, the Dean of the ISTAC. Alhamdulillah, I am given such a good opportunities to talk in this forum. I feel it is very much important. And the title itself is very exciting, Valorising the Migrants' Human Dignities, Global Engagement, Together with Trends. So in fact, I was one of the WFP, World Food Program, the egg staff. I was working in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and also Myanmar, particularly in Rohingya area. So about 10 years of my experience teach me that how suffering of these migrants and the refugees. When I had the experience in Arakan, where these Rohingyas were there. So it is all because both Arakan as well as the people of Myanmar, irrespective of race and religion, due to the prolonged civil war, and also the lack of educational developments in the country, make everyone wild and quarreling each other. So the main cause of the conflict of Rohingya in Myanmar, I would say that it is all started because of the lack of education. And then problem continue to furthest. So this is my own personal observation. Because I was there, I engaged in World Food Program and also Unhcr activities in Northern Arakan. And I engaged in repatriation of the Rohingyas refugees in 1989. They were living in the camp of Bangladesh. So we brought back to the Arakan, then we established their repatriation process and rehabilitation program in Myanmar, where we established the school as well as the clinic and also the income generation program for the widows and the women who are single. So that's why we come to know the problem. Plus my experience in Afghanistan, about 3 million of the Afghan refugees, when they were residing in Pakistan and Iran and Tajikistan and around this country. So we come to know the distress and problem and difficulties of the refugees. So that is my past experience. But after 10 years of my serving at the United Nations, when I was in Myanmar, there was a crisis. My passport was not renewed. And because of my nationality and my religious identity as a Muslim, they seized my passport and I was locked in Myanmar. So I have no choice to come out. Therefore, I started working on my educational progress. I became a master and PhD holder. I moved to Malaysia and I worked in International Islamic University as a lecturer at the Department of the KRAHS. And when I reached to Malaysia also, I couldn't keep myself aloof from all this distress of the refugees and the migrants. And according to Unhcr reports, about 200,000 the refugees or migrants are living in Malaysia. And you all know that the Somalian or Iraqians or Syrians or Bosnian, particularly when you talk about the Myanmar refugees, then I become so accelerated. So I engage with them ever since I came to Malaysia. As I am the lecturer at the International Islamic University, my way of discussing is on the way I'm teaching to my students. So I use this slide, and which can also help you to understand about this. So when we are talking since the morning till now about the migrants and refugees, so who are migrants? So we should know the difference between the migrant as well as the refugees. The group of people who have in common a lack of citizenship attachment to their host country. It is without prejudice to the protecting regimes that exist under the international law for specific legal categories of people such as refugees, stateless persons, trafficked persons, or migrant workers. And who are the refugees? A refugee is strictly defined in international law as a person who is fleeing persecution, or conflict in her or his country of origin. As noted above, there is no such a precise universal definition of a migrant. It is important to underline that refugees are entitled to the full protection of refugees law, including protection from expulsion or return to situation of precaution where their life and freedom are at risk. When we talk about the refugees or migrants, basically we have sort of allergy or who they are, why they come to our country. This sort of feeling comes up. Therefore, UNHCR High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet was talking about the new narratives of the migrants and refugees, which is so interesting. She said, instead of repeating harmful narratives of fear and exclusion, it is time to welcome people into our communities to reimagine our collective future. So it's very, it hit my heart that when we look at the refugees, at least we should be able to understand their distress. And when we understand about the humanistic quality, then it makes us be with them and for with them and buy with them. This is the feeling we can grow with that. And also, I'm not going to talk too much about what I have said in my slide. I will just concise this, maybe because of the time constraint. And basically, about 281 million people, approximately 3.6% of the world population, currently live outside their countries of origin, many of whose migrants is characterized by the varying degrees of the compulsion. So here what I want to say, you look at this one, 281 million people are today migrants or refugees, taking refuge under the shelters of the international communities. So what should we be doing? Here, the United Nations Global Compact is a pact, is a body of the United Nations, which is coming up, giving the direction and policy towards protecting refugees and the migrants. What they are now talking about is strengthening evidence-based, human rights-based policy making and public discourse on migration. It is what we have to engage into. Number two, minimizing the diverse drivers of migration, including combating poverty and discrimination and addressing climate disaster-related displacement. Number three, ensuring migrant rights to information and to a legal identity. Number four, addressing the producing vulnerabilities and human rights violation in the context of migration. This is happening every camps of the refugees, but the action taken is very less. Number four, protecting the right to life in the context of migration. Today we have a lot of refugees. They have the health issue, debt issue, but the action taken is very less. So sometimes we found, but we can't help it. There is no immediate assistance come to help these people. Number five, expanding and diversifying availability of the pathway for safe, orderly, and regular migration, taking into account the particular needs for migrants in situation of the vulnerability. Number six, protecting the right to decent work and other labor rights for migrants. For example, I was discussing with Brother Andrea. Some of the refugees are not allowed to work in the Malaysian sector of the work. So therefore, we need to take action, or we need to request the government of Malaysia, if possible, because when I look at their household, the people over there in their camps, they have no job. They have no right to work in the other section. So how are they going to handle their families' matters, feeding, and so on? So it is very sad to see this situation over there. And next is the addressing and reducing vulnerabilities and human rights violation in the context of migration. That's the reason I was asking Brother Andrew to come and see the camps in our society, what is happening over there. Next, protecting the right to life in the context of migration. And I think this is next, combating smuggling and trafficking. This is what really happened, particularly the young girls and young boys. And Adrian was talking about the forced labor and also the young boys, they are used in this, activities, which has to be taken care of. Next is the protecting the right to liberty and freedom from the arbitrary detection, including by prioritizing alternatives to migration detention. Next, ensuring migrants' right to access basic services, including health, education, social support, without discrimination. For me particularly, I took my student from UIA. We engaged in the project, helping the student at the camps in establishing and even including our Prof. Abdul Aziz was with me sometime. So we help our children to promote their education. Next, eliminating discrimination and combating hate speech and xenophobia. And the last one is upholding the prohibition of the collective expulsion and refoulements for all migrants, ensuring that returns are safe and dignified, and also reintegration is sustainable. Okay, this is all are the policies towards the refugees and migrants initiated by the United Nations, World Food Programs, and also why? Now this is all UN bodies and organizations and the government, and also this, the policies are there. It's very good. But the problem is implementation at the ground. That is the most important. So in that case, some of the NGOs come up, and particularly the university role is very important. That's why our Tansari, director of the International Islamic University, advised us, just only involve physically with the refugees is not enough. We should also involve. It will be more effective when spiritually also involved with them. Therefore, how to initiate or develop the spirituality when we work with the refugees? Because when you develop the spirituality, then you are going to also apply the humanistic quality and humanistic consciousness. That is the most important inner feeling. When you have that one, you couldn't stay yourself back, but you are ready to come and work with the migrants and the people, the poor who need your assistance. Then, in that case, altruism is the most important element, and that we have to develop ourselves. When we use that one, it also is a part of the human experience. Other cannot understand very well, but the people who involved in this field, they realize it very well. Then it also strengthens the social connection. We come to know many people, particularly distress of the people. The next is also boost our self-esteem also. We don't need to advertise who we are, but when we engage in this one, the world come to know about what our altruism work on this one. The next is also it can improve our health. That's why I see our Tansiri is, quite old, 80 years old, but still active in this field. It makes us feel and help. And next is it can also lengthen our life. It's also good for our workplace, improve our relationship. It gives meaning to life. And the last, the slide, which we wanted to also develop and enhance the human dignity, particularly when we deal with the refugees, and particularly the children of the refugees. When we see them, we couldn't control ourselves, our emotion, our feeling, our sadness, who we are enjoying at our position as a lecturer or whatever we are. But when we look at these children, what is their fault? How they become the refugees? Why are they suffering like this? Why their parents couldn't get the good job and good salary the way we are having this one? Therefore, we have to apply RIRR, the policy. RIRR is respect, irrespective of race and religion. If we apply this one, doesn't matter, either Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim or Korean or Christian or whatever, we are all together as a human being. We have to live together. This world is for all of us, not only for one race or one religion. This is why the policy of RIRR, it will definitely work for you. Second thing is ADRH. What is ADRH? Agree to disagree respectfully and happily. This is what our Tansiri, our rector of the IIUM, He just mentioned in his speech about the migration of the Prophet from Makkah to Medina, where he made it all the residents of the Medina, make them one together and one society. If you look at the constitution of the Medina, in the world, according to my study, it was the first constitution ever written in the history. That is what the written by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It has the 63 article. Article number 5, it says that we have to be, live together, either Jew or Christian or whatever. We have to live together. So in that case, he made a very successful society in Medina. Therefore, they can live it peacefully, and they have established the Islamic, the golden era and the civilization about the 1,300 years. The next one is the CDSG, call out disrespectful behavior, show gratitude. The last one is the CAAW, compliment achievement of others, compliment the achievement of others, apologize when you are in the wrong, And this is all from my the discussion about this one. Now I wanted to show you just for 3 minutes of my activities which I engage with our the refugees, migrants, with my student who participated in this honorable activities working with the refugees. And you can see this one. This is all are the students of IIUM who engage, all are my students who engage in this program of helping the refugees. This is all my students. This is before the COVID 2020. So this is we took it. And here is all the activities. We have visited 40 schools around this Kuala Lumpur and the Klang Valley. You can see the photo. Next, whatever we could do. These are the refugees families living in the Salayang and also the Klang areas. We met with the society people over there. Whatever we could assist, we assist to them. This is what the assistant, we work with some of the NGOs, we distributed food to the refugees. And this what we try to help. This is our IIUM community who donated such assistance to the refugees. This is our school project, SDG project, which Sister Mimi was talking about, the Sustainable Development Project. So about the dozens of our professors involved in this project, we go to the school, work for this program. And these are the refugees' children where we set up a school at Salayang. And here you can see the refugees' children. We have a proper, academic courses we established, and we are helping the children. So you can see we brought some of our students to help these children. And this is Prof. Dr. Abdul Aziz is with us here, and we visited that school and we help our small children. So this is what IIUM is so much interested to work with the refugees as our policy. This is the Women Development Program in Salayang and in Ampa. So women are also very important because nowadays at the refugee houses, we come to see the domestic torture. It is because of the husband, they don't understand skill in parenting and family management. So we teach the parenting at the women of these refugee camps here. So you can see here our students engage with the children, providing the Malay language and also the basic education. Here you look at our students we honor who engage in this program. This is what some of the parliamentary members, they also come up. We engage in all these activities. This is our lecturers who involved in this program. So now I wanted to finalize it because of the time constraint. These are the, in Salayang, 11 basic Islamic schools are there. But the problem is they don't provide the modern education. They don't want to teach the mathematics, science, English, and what. That's the reason we come up. We establish our school at the Salayang and understanding these people importance about the modern knowledge. So these are the scholars,
Thank you,
the
Dr.
refugee
Maulana.
scholars. So that's all from my side. And you can see how we are helping these children. Thank you so much. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of our listener. And thanks again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Maulana, mashallah, for all your efforts and this all activities and works shows us the other side, the practical side of what we are speaking about in this webinar. Alhamdulillah, we come to the end of the speeches of our learned professors, activists, and scholars. And I really would like to thank our viewers in the YouTube and also in the Zoom here for their presence with us and being patient. Alhamdulillah, a lot of ideas, a lot of views we gathered from starting from the speech of our rector until the speech of Dr. Maulana. This is a very wonderful kind of a forum in which we saw many perspectives looking at this phenomena of migrants and refugee. In this occasion of the International Migrant Day, we have the diplomatic perspective, we have the UN perspective, we have the UN CHR perspective, we have the Dato Fazal perspective, we have Dato Sri Tansri Richter from his perspective, combining the academic, the practitioner, and the person who really carries that the mission of serving the community and caring about the society. I think this is a very wonderful workshop where we have our sisters. We have Miss Karima, and also we have Sister Mimi, and we have the diplomats, we have all the people, we have our Muslim and non-Muslim participant. We have another 20 minutes to the end of our webinar. We're supposed to end by 1 o'clock, and we have some questions in the chat. I hope Prof. Tansri Zul is with us here. Tansri, Prof. Tansri. Okay, so I have some questions which I gathered and I put them in the form of question. If Tansri not here, I will just go to the second. Your Excellency, Ambassador Pascal, Your Excellency, how do you see the future role of the European community in contributing to solve the issues of migrants locally there and also globally? Any impactful initiatives for the benefit of all?
Thank you very much, Professor, for the question. And again, thank you so very much to all the speakers for sharing this huge experience and very practical, insightful elements. To reply in a nutshell to your question, Professor, I would say the following. We have to remember from where we are coming at European Union level. European Union level is a kind of a collection of 27 member states, which are all sovereign member states. And asylum and migration is typically, by essence, a national issue, a national question, a national matter of interest. So basically, this is up to each and every single member state of the European Union to deal with its own way with migration and asylum issues. Of course, since now at least 10 years and the acceleration of the migration crisis, there has been more awareness, not only at the political level, but also at the civil society level and also at the regular European Union citizens. And lately, recently, the European Commission, through the voice of its president, Mrs. von der Leyen, came in September 2020 with what they call a new pact for migration and asylum. In a nutshell, this new pact introduced the following: effective and fair management of external borders, including identity, health, and security checks, fair and efficient asylum rules, streamlining procedures on asylum and return, a new solidarity mechanism for situations of search and rescue, pressure, and crisis, stronger foresight, crisis preparedness and response, efficient EU coordinated approach to returns, comprehensive governance at EU level for better management and implementation of asylum and migration policies, mutually beneficial partnership with key third countries of origin and transit, development of sustainable legal pathway for those in need of protection and to attract talent to the EU, and support to effective integration policies. So really huge effort to coordinate better, to harmonize better the approach, the national approach at European level for a better, fairer, and more efficient treatment of crisis situation, but also on longer term solution and alternative to migration. Second, and lastly also, let me remind you that European Union institutions with each and a single European Union countries, members of the European Union, are constituting the biggest donor with respect, world donor with respect to international and cooperation development. 50% of world development cooperation is provided by the European Union and its member states. So trying to help the countries which are in need of social development and better governance and so on, to strengthen the institution, to strengthen the opportunities to generate prosperity and so on. And also a very important donor with respect to climate change and to support the countries which are in need in Pacific Islands, in Asia, Southeast Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, to help to strengthen their mechanism to cope with the impact of climate change, with forced migration and so on. This is, Professor, in a nutshell, what I have to share with you with this respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Very wonderful answer to the question. Moving forward, we have a question to our Dato Fazal, and before that, I wanted to read the comment of Dr. Martin Chomar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and thanks so much for Dato Fazal for your insightful information and knowledge regarding migration and human diaspora, especially for those words that touching and refreshing our memory, such as culture of changing, which emphasizes the influence of culture capital on individual and humanity behavior. Dato, there is one question says, Dato, based on your vast experience, what is your view on how to engage the Islamic world and especially the OIC member countries in collective and concerted efforts to deal with this global phenomenon? Go ahead, Dato.
Thank you, Prof. The role of the Islamic world, I think, is so critical because if you look at the impact, the constituencies of migrants, so the majority of them are Muslim, and the engagement of Islamic states also in conflicts in different parts of the world also are significant. So I think we need a very strong, systematic way of getting the Muslim nations engaged. And one of the tactics that we have used in many of our movements is what we call shock and awe, yeah, and even shaming, yeah. But we do it in a very gentle, systematic way, very much along what Maulana was saying, how to disagree without being disagreeable, how do you work out systematically. And this is the concept of the state of refugees and migrants, country by country. And for us to develop the indicators in terms of like the conforming acceptance of the UN UN codes and global compact and the indicators that those agencies are using. And to do a questionnaire, and this is something again that an academic institution like IIUM can take initiative, and with it linking up with other universities in different parts of the world to be so you have now state of the world on human rights, state of the world on the environment, you have the state of the world on this, and many of these report like the state of the world on breastfeeding. We have done that. Toxic substances, we have done that in terms of countries that are complying, not complying with various issues. And so a state of migrants and refugees in the OIC countries would be a very systematic way of drawing attention. And then you have systems where people can see the countries that are doing something, the countries that are not doing something, evidence that it can be done, and evidence that people are ignoring this, that. And you get attention when you do this exercise like this. Yeah? UNICEF once did one on the state of children in an Islamic state. And it really shocked and awed people because the state of children in the Islamic world was just, in a way, shamefully terrible. Yeah, and you could see the different situations for a culture that talks about dignity, about knowledge, about wisdom, and and learning, all part of the culture. Learning the Quran, understanding the Quran, and moving, and then you find yet very, very bad statistics in terms of schooling and learning about various kinds of things that make life possible. So this is one systematic project that could actually come out from IIUM. The methodologies are all around, and then you can work with in partnership with IOM, in partnership with UNHCR, and even this number of civil society groups. We have mapping of civil society groups all over the world that all the Islamic countries that would be interested in public interest issues. There can be media groups that are interested in this kind of work. So a kind of engagement that also one way provides a link among the people who have a special interest, who are part of the public interest system, and a way of engaging civil society group, engaging the university group, engaging also spiritual groups. I'm so impressed by Maulana's work, so systematically, so strongly inspired by spirituality, and doing it so well on the ground and in a very organized way. And so I think a way of this kind of systematic exercise, particularly because the single largest concern about refugees should come from our countries. And the other element that needs to be is something that even Russia, when the compact was discussed, made a comment on. The people who are responsible for creating the problems that led to also the civic, the pain of having to be leaving the country, the pain of deaths, and scandals, including corruption, and all kinds of things that are happening. We need also to be far more forceful, and there are international activist organizations who are related to war related to the new kinds of militarism, the kind of new imperialism where countries are targeted as being problematic and must be destroyed. And those of you who read, for example, the project for the 21st century, that was done in the United States, to see how geopolitics was moving around. And I think that's again another issue that people should become more aware. And I tell very often a story that we can be so active in saving babies who are drowning in the river, but we don't have time to look up and see who is throwing the babies into the water. Yeah? And this is what you call structural thinking, and looking at the source of the problem. So activism in terms of public action, shaming of the kind of powers that are dealing with this is also something that systematically can be done. There can be institutions that write about these things, but very often you need an independent, brave, courageous people with conscience who will speak out about these kinds of issues. And there are networks around that that can do this kind of work. So this is the second way, I think, of engaging and looking at some of the structural elements. Partly, for example, like Myanmar, and the whole Rohingya problem, the role that ASEAN does not play, because they have a convention that we don't interfere in the state of the individual states. But where there is an access that impacts on global human rights, where it impacts on, you can say, internationally agreed norms. It was like also not caring for the environment and allowing forests to burn in your country, and the smoke goes on to another country and poisons people in there. Surely that is not acceptable. And so even in regional organizations, then they need to be strengthened. And so civil society groups that are part of the, you can say, civil society elements that are looking at ASEAN issues, they've been fighting these kinds of things. But these type of things, again, need to become more and more visible. And that's the way to go to, also at the same time as we do this state of the migrant and refugees in the OIC countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Dato. I think you have put it very clearly, and no other words to describe the well given answer to the question. I think that's really great, and many of us will benefit from this wisdom and these views, inshallah. I think because of the constraint of time, we have maybe another 10 minutes. We have some questions to our other speakers. I hope maybe in 2-3 minutes they can address. We have a question to our sister Wan Mimi. Thank you very much for your informative lecture. Being a practical and down-to-earth person, in your opinion, how do you see Malaysia playing stronger role in the education of the migrants and their children and valorizing their presence here?
Well, the answer to this, honestly, is just one word: inclusivity. Because in terms of education, Unhcr has been working with we have 5 main partners as well as some 30 other operational partners to shoulder the unique challenge of having to support what is called an informal community-based education system, comprising some 130 learning centers located all over Peninsular Malaysia. This is to ensure that we are able to mitigate the gap due to the children being excluded from the national education system. But despite the concerted efforts and support received from various donors, including the Qatari government through the Education Above All and the Educate a Child project, enrollment rate is still low across all levels at just 30%. So having the various ministries such as Ministry of Education, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and certainly the National Security Council as the main interlocutors for Unhcr in the education sector, and given the opportunity for growth in this area that can be mutually beneficial, there's a few key recommendations that we would very much like to explore with the government. Strengthening the education framework for refugees is, as I said, mutually beneficial, and it demonstrates Malaysia's commitment, not just upholding the right to education, it's also supporting the country's aspirations in terms of meeting the 2030 agenda, as well as being aligned with Malaysia's position on the UN Human Rights Council. So here are some key recommendations. First and foremost, the Ministry of Education, sometime back in 2016, had agreed to register and license learning centers that are under UNHCR protection, serving the refugees. To date, we've got some 18 learning centers that have successfully been registered, but we still have more than 100 that has yet to be registered. So we really hope that the Ministry of Education can resume this as soon as possible. Keeping in mind, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic and, of course, the current floods. Because through this registration and licensing process, while there is no access to the formal education system, the registration is a big step towards greater inclusion in the national education system, because that means that refugee children and youth are accessing quality education at places that are recognized and registered with the government. So there is the issue of accreditation and certification as well. So apart from this, MOE perhaps could finalize a set of minimum standards to act as a guide to all the learning centers under UNHCR protection, with focus on child protection and child safeguarding policies, knowing that these children are among the most vulnerable. For greater access to online learning, COVID-19 has completely changed the landscape of education. So a key step there is to allow learning centers under UNHCR to access the Digital Education Learning Initiative Malaysia, or DELIMA, which is a platform under MOE, which is a combination of years of efforts from MOE along with Google, Microsoft, and Apple. There's also allowing refugee children and youth to sit for national certified examinations such as UPSR and SPM for them to gain certification, which would definitely hold them in good state wherever they go, whether back to their home country or to countries of resettlement. On this note, I have to say, like, I do keep in touch with refugees who have resettled. Many of them are in the US. When it comes to spreading the usage of Bahasa Malaysia abroad, seriously, these Rohingya children who have grown up here and accessed primary education while they were here, they're the ones who are speaking still in Bahasa amongst them. And speaking in Rohingya with their parents, but with their peers it's Bahasa. So there's all this positive impact from educating refugee children. There's also like allowing the learning center teachers to access accredited teacher training programs at the teaching colleges and institutions under the government. This would enable them to be better teachers and better manage classroom, and ensure that the quality at all the learning centers are at par with the public school system. Perhaps we could explore expanding and increasing learning centers' capacity by using underutilized public school spaces, because we know that there's some public schools that which has suffered in a decrease in enrollment rate over the years. With the mushrooming of private schools and international schools. So we could perhaps do something that like what's being done in Lebanon, where the local children attend school in the morning and the refugee children go to school in the afternoon, where a dual system ensures inclusivity despite the various challenges. So these are among the key recommendations and asks if Malaysia is to take this seriously. I mean, it would certainly put Malaysia at the forefront as a refugee hosting country within the region.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Sister Mimi, for these wonderful recommendations and suggestions. MashaAllah. Okay, let me just move quickly to our, we have another two questions, one to Mr. Adrian and one to Dr. Maulana. I hope we can, inshallah, finish because it's already 1 o'clock. Mr. Adrian, thank you for bringing these issues and highlighting the real issues faced by migrants. In your view, what are your suggestions to move forward? I think you put also many answers also in the chat. Go ahead, Mr. Adrian.
Yeah, so like in my earlier sharing, we have to use a rights-based standards, and the principle and philosophy of non-discrimination is important. So when you have non-discrimination across the board, then we are able to evaluate the treatment and the rights given to everyone, not just migrants and refugees, but also Malaysians. Let's not forget that there are a lot of Malaysians who are also left behind. So if we have these concepts of non-discrimination across the board, not just in the country of destination, but looking at the country of origin, and over time you get to normalize human rights and social justice in a conceptual manner. But first we need to help Malaysians who are angry, who don't understand why migrants are here, that there are reasons why the communities have come here. And with that understanding, we hopefully with compassion, with an open heart, we will be able to take care of one another. Now there's always the big question of, okay, who's going to fund all of this? So of course that is naturally an economic and also a political question, but there are so many options. There are international donors, UN agencies who have been very generous. We can see Qatar, playing a very important role in the terms of refugee healthcare. So those are problems that can be solved. There's enough resource for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Maulana, any comment on the question? Thank you for your beautiful presentation. Do you think this experience with the Rohingya community here in Malaysia can be done with other communities with the help of IIUM and other partners?
Alhamdulillah. I think this is a very good question. In fact, as I have explained earlier, the human being, when we apply the humanistic consciousness, either it is Rohingya or Malaysia, or as we have here, the Somalian or Iraqian, or also the Syrians, Bosnian, the people from refugees from different countries, I think around about 200,000, or as Sister Mimi was talking about, the number of the refugees in Malaysia. Irrespective, as I mentioned in my talk, irrespective of race and religion, we should help it. Since the question raised that other community could also be helped from the IIUM. In fact, the department where I am teaching is fundamental and interdisciplinary studies, where we always emphasize on these spiritualities and also engagement of the human concept, human consciousness. Inshallah ta'ala, if we have the participation from the other NGOs and Unhcr, and inshallah, whoever willing to request us, we have resources. Our students are here and they need also experience amalgamating with the communities. Not only this academic, but the real experience mingling with the people. That is the challenges our students are also looking for. So therefore, if there is any request come up from any refugees or migrant communities, we can make a project, we can engage, and we can help those people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maulana, mashallah. Dear brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, we come to the end of this very wonderful forum which combined all these experienced people. And we really, you have really enriched the discourse and the discussions in this area. I really would like to thank Prof. Zul, the rector of IUM, for initiating the idea and putting it in this narrative and in this context. I think our university may be among the few who celebrated this International Migrants Day with this, bringing these great scholars and activists and professionals and diplomats. And I think if you see the composition of our speakers, it's a very wonderful experience today, looking at things from a different perspective. In fact, the presence of Ms. Karima through her video and His Excellence Mr. Pascal, the ambassador of Belgium to Malaysia, and the presence of Prof. Dato Fazal with us today, with all this legacy of more than 60 years of experience and doing all these things, and with the presence of our sister Mimi, brother Adrian, and Dr. Maulana, I feel that I will not let you go away. I will always rope you in our programs to come, inshallah. And I think your inputs will be of great help, not only to us in the university, but I think also to policymakers, those who will who are listening to us, or those who will listen to this video later on. I think it's really something that we appreciate. We have many viewers in the YouTube, and very high level viewers who don't want to be named, but this is really something great today, and we have celebrated this International Migrants Day. And in this occasion, I wanted to repeat again how Dato Fazal was very instrumental in the success of this program. And I have been communicating with him for a few months, and I found in him the dynamism and the liveliness of very young person. People should not look at the age, but look at the heart and the soul and the spirit, how he is really I learned a lot of things from him in the last few discussions and meetings and communications. It's really wonderful. The last thing I wanted to mention, brothers and sisters, here, after we have heard all this and all your contributions, all the things that you are doing as UN, as other bodies, civil society, the government, the people, the countries, the ambassadors, and all these people, I want just to make a conclusion that with all these things that we have in our disposal, in our hands as government, public sector, private sector, civil society, practitioners and people, we have a lot of things. It's just a matter of how we package, how we articulate them, how we, with this concept of togetherness and sacrifice and coming together and harnessing the potential of migrant and the governments themselves, we can do, I think, wonders as human to maintain this human dignity. In the end, I say, because in our university, especially our rector, in the last few years, he was mooting the idea of spirituality to the extent that he is speaking about SDG 18. We have 17 SDGs covering a lot of things of sustainable development, but he mooted the idea of SDG 18, which is spirituality and spiritual values, and how can humanity, spirituality, and the humanness which is inside each and every human can help in advancing this collective resolve and collaboration among nations and people to help lessen the burden of those migrants and refugees who are in need of us, and bring people together so that we celebrate change which is positive and in the benefit of every and each one in this world. Of course, many challenges are ahead of us, and the answer is togetherness, peace, cooperation, engagement, commitment, and helping one another for the sake of saving humanity. With this, I really thank all our panelists for all their generous time and ideas. And I thank all the participants in the Zoom and in the YouTube. And I thank all those people who supported us and helped us in organizing this event. May God bless you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you very much. May God bless you. In the Zoom here, we will just have a photo together and we'll end our session, inshallah. Can we just show the camera, the picture, the photo of everyone so that we can have a photo together? I think our technical person is taking the picture, inshallah. Can we just open? For those who can open, we can have the picture, inshallah. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Done, inshallah. May God bless you all. Wassalamu alaikum once again. Thank you, Mr. Pascal, Dato Anwar, Sister Mimi, and our Adrian, and all the people. We had a lot of people from Pakistan, from Nigeria, from Indonesia, from many parts of the world with us. Thank you very much, Brother Abdullah Malik. Thanks. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Mimi, thank you. Well done.
Bye. See you all soon. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum.